It started with a cup of coffee. Isn't that how it always goes in those stories? A man finds out his whole life's been turned inside out over something as small as a casual morning ritual. I never thought that'd be me. That morning felt unremarkable. Just another gray Seattle Wednesday, cool and a little damp. I had no meetings, no pressing deadlines, just a bit of breathing room for once. So, when I remembered Skylar, the woman I'd built my life with, mentioning River Roasters for the third time in a week, I figured I'd stop by. She always made it sound like the place had something magical in their espresso beans. You haven't lived until you've tried their lavender latte, she'd told me with that dramatic flair of hers, like coffee could change someone's life. I found street parking a few blocks away, shoved my hands into my coat pockets, and walked a few steps to the cafe. It was one of those renovated brick wall places with reclaimed wood everywhere and tiny succulents on the windowsills. You know the type. Bougie but charming. It smelled like roasted beans, vanilla, and a hint of cinnamon. Cozy. Familiar in a way I didn't expect. I ordered a latte vanilla, not lavender, because I couldn't quite bring myself to go that far, and grabbed a seat by the window. It was quiet enough that I could hear the soft hum of conversation mixed with the clinking of silverware and the occasional hiss from the espresso machine. For the first time in a while, I felt relaxed. 10 minutes in, I was scrolling through emails on my phone, deciding whether or not to actually be productive when the door chimed. I looked up, and everything inside me shifted. It was Skylar. I blinked like I might have been imagining it. But there she was, walking in with a group of 3 people, 2 women and 1 man. I froze, unsure if I should wave. Maybe it was just coincidence. She hadn't mentioned coming here today, but maybe she made a spontaneous stop. That wouldn't be out of character. I watched as they picked a table dead center in the cafe. Not tucked away in a corner like you'd do if you wanted privacy. No, they were right in the spotlight. Like it wasn't even a secret. She hadn't seen me. Or if she had, she didn't show it. I couldn't help but look at the guy sitting across from her. He was tall, well-dressed, with the kind of ease that people like me don't trust on instinct. He pulled out her chair. She smiled and said something, and then they all sat down. Laptops opened. Notebooks came out. It looked like a meeting until it didn't. The conversation drifted over in waves. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, not at first. But when it's your wife, your partner, laughing loud enough to echo across the cafe, you tune in. One of the women was talking about something her boyfriend did, something about trying to cook pasta and ending up with burned toast. Everyone laughed. Then Skylar chimed in. Oh, Mark's the same. One time, the waiter handed him the wine list and he just froze. Full on panic mode. Like it was a test. Laughter. Hers included. I didn't laugh. There's a kind of hurt that doesn't immediately register. It creeps in slow. I felt it then, like the tightening of a belt around my chest. My face got warm. Not from embarrassment, there was no one there to be embarrassed in front of, but from the slow realization that I was the punchline in a room I wasn't even supposed to be in. I tried to tell myself it was harmless. Just a story. Married couples tease each other all the time, right? But then I saw the way she looked at him. The guy across the table. He wasn't laughing at my expense the way the others were. No, he was smiling at her. Like he knew her in a way that made him feel entitled to it. And she smiled back. Not the way she smiled at me when I made coffee for her in the morning or surprised her with a dumb joke. The smile was softer. Lingering. Like there was something between them neither of them had said out loud, but both were thinking. That's when my hand twitched and I bumped the paper lid off my cup. It hit the ground with a soft tap, but in the quiet lull of conversation it may as well have been a thunderclap. She turned. For a moment I thought maybe she wouldn't recognize me. I had my coat zipped, my hat pulled low. But the second our eyes met, her face drained of color. Her mouth opened slightly like she was about to say something, maybe even call out, but then she shut it again. I stood up. Slowly. Calmly. I wasn't even sure what I was doing. I didn't make a scene. I didn't say her name. I didn't throw my cup. I just walked toward the door, like I'd just finished my drink and had somewhere to be. My legs moved without much instruction from me, as if some deeper instinct had taken over. Just get out. Outside, the air hit colder than it had felt earlier. I didn't even notice the rain had picked up until I saw the drops on my sleeves. I was halfway to the car when I heard footsteps behind me. Mark. I didn't turn. Mark, wait, please. She caught up to me at the crosswalk, grabbing my arm. I turned just enough to face her. Her eyes were wild, her words tumbling out of her like marbles scattered on the floor. It's not what it looked like. I swear. He's part of my team. We had a deadline this morning and I figured. Here. I asked, finally speaking. She blinked. What? This place. You brought him here? The place you've been talking about for 2 weeks. You said we should come here together. It was coincidence he suggested it. Right, I said, not buying it. Look, she said, voice quieter now, I didn't know you'd be here. I mean, what are the odds? I can explain. It's just a meeting, work, I promise. Her tone was too smooth, too rehearsed. Like someone caught in a lie who had practiced how to spin it just right if ever discovered. I stared at her for a long moment. She looked like Skylar. But something was off. I don't know if it was the way her eyes darted around or how her hand trembled slightly as she held onto her bag strap. Something wasn't right. I could feel it in my gut. But I didn't want to start a scene on a city sidewalk. I wasn't going to shout or demand answers, not now. Not in public. So I shook my head and walked away. When I got into the car and shut the door, the silence felt louder than any shouting match. My hands were steady, but my thoughts weren't. I sat there for a long time, watching the rain slide down the windshield, trying to make sense of what just happened. She'd made fun of me. Not in private. Not at home in a teasing, playful way. In front of people I didn't know, coworkers, maybe friends, and she'd done it with laughter in her eyes. And that man. I didn't know him. But I knew enough. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe I caught her in a weird moment. But maybe not. That's the problem with doubt. Once it takes root, it grows fast. And for the first time in our marriage, I didn't feel safe. Not in the way a person should feel when they think about the one they've shared a life with. Instead, I felt like a stranger peeking in through the glass, watching a scene that I wasn't supposed to witness. That's when I knew something had shifted. Something small, but irreversible. I didn't say a word the rest of the day. Not to her. Not to anyone. But I thought. And once I started thinking, I couldn't stop. After that morning at River Roasters, something in me cracked. Not enough to shatter, not yet, but I could feel the pressure building. For a while, I tried to tell myself it was all in my head. That maybe I'd misread things. Maybe I'd caught her in a bad moment. Maybe work really was just stressful and the guy was just some unlucky colleague she leaned on a little too much. But deep down, I knew better. I'd seen it. That laugh? That look? The way her expression changed the second she saw me. You don't get that pale over a coincidence. That night, she came home with Thai food and a carefully cheerful voice. I was already on the couch when she walked in, scrolling aimlessly through my phone, pretending I wasn't just replaying the scene from the cafe on loop in my head. Hey, she said, kicking off her heels. I figured we could do something easy tonight. I got your favorite Penang curry, extra spicy. I nodded. Thanks. She walked over, kissed me lightly on the forehead, more out of habit than warmth, and went to set the table. It was all so normal. That was the worst part. She was good at this. The pretending. The gloss. But my eyes had been opened. From that day on, I started paying closer attention. Not in a paranoid, over-the-top way. Just observing. Quietly. The way someone does when they already suspect the answer and are just waiting for the final puzzle piece to click into place. And the more I looked, the more I saw. It started with her phone. She used to leave it lying around. On the counter, the nightstand, the kitchen table. Never locked. Never face down. But now? It was always with her. If she got up to grab a glass of water, it came with. If she was brushing her teeth, it was next to the sink. When we watched TV, she'd keep it in her lap, glancing down every few minutes. And the second I entered the room, she'd flip it face down, almost reflexively. I asked her once, jokingly, if she had some kind of top-secret spy job. She laughed, said she was just swamped with clients and didn't want to get distracted. You know how it is, she added, as if that explained the change in behavior. But I did know how it was. And it didn't feel right. Then there were the passwords. We used to share everything, streaming logins, iCloud, even the Wi-Fi. No big deal. We never even discussed it. It just made sense. But I noticed one night that her laptop was asking for a new password. I tried the one I'd always known, it didn't work. Same with her phone. When I asked, she said, oh, I had to reset everything after that security breach last month. Remember? It was all over the news. Sure. Okay. Except I never had to reset mine. Then there were her clothes. Now look, I'm not one of those guys who gets weird about their wife dressing up. I've always admired her confidence, how she could rock a blazer one day and a leather jacket the next. But lately, her style shifted. It was subtle at first. More crop tops. Tighter jeans. Heels on days that didn't seem to require them. And a new perfume, stronger, muskier. One I'd never smelled on her before. I mentioned it once offhandedly. New scent. She shrugged. It was a sample at the salon. Figured I'd try something different. Different. Yeah, that was one way to put it. She also started working later. Not crazy hours, just enough to raise questions I wasn't sure I wanted the answers to. Meetings that ran late. Dinners with clients that came out of nowhere. Nights she'd come home full but say she wasn't hungry. I'd ask who she met with, what project she was working on. The answers were always vague. Glossy. Smooth. Too smooth. Our dinners changed too. She stopped inviting me out. We used to have this little tradition, Friday night sushi or that taco place by the pier. It was our thing. Even during our busiest weeks, we made time for that. But now? She'd text around 6, already 8, long day. Love you. Or worse, she just wouldn't mention it. I remember opening the fridge one night and not recognizing anything inside. Containers with food I didn't buy. Vegetables she never liked. A bottle of imported sparkling water I'd never seen before. It was like someone else had done the shopping. For someone else's house. And then there were the nights on the balcony. At first, I thought she just needed air. She'd take her laptop, a blanket, a glass of wine, and sit out there for hours. She used to invite me to join her. We'd talk, stargaze. But lately, she preferred being alone. Said she was catching up on work. Said she needed to clear her head. Always the same wine, the same headphones, the same closed door between us. One night, around 2 in the morning, I woke up thirsty. I walked down to get some water and heard her voice, quiet but urgent, from the balcony. I peeked out through the blinds. She was pacing, one hand in her hair, the other holding her phone. I told you I can't just, no, not tonight. I know, okay? Just please. Not now. Then silence. When I opened the balcony door a minute later, it was empty. I found her in bed, under the covers, eyes closed. She wasn't asleep. Not even close. Her breathing was too shallow. Her fingers twitched slightly. But she didn't move. And neither did I. I lay down beside her, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between heartbeats. I wanted to ask. I wanted to confront. But I didn't. Because once you open that door, really open it, there's no closing it again. The worst part wasn't the growing suspicion. It was how normal everything else stayed. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. Still said love you at the end of every phone call. Still asked if I wanted oat milk or regular when she made smoothies. Still touched my arm lightly when she walked past me in the kitchen. But every gesture felt like a performance. Like she was trying to preserve the illusion even if she didn't believe in it anymore. And here's the thing, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to be that overthinking husband with too much time and not enough trust. Because the alternative that the woman I trusted, loved, and built a life with was slipping away in pieces was unbearable. But deep down I knew. I knew that something was changing. Something real. Something that didn't come back. And it wasn't just her. It was me too. I started pulling back without meaning to. I stopped reaching for her hand when we walked down the street. I stopped leaving little notes on the bathroom mirror the way I used to. I didn't ask about her day anymore, not because I didn't care, but because I already knew the answer I'd get would be half a lie, polished and delivered with a smile. And somewhere in the silence between us, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she hadn't been for a while. And I was the last one to notice. When she told me she was going to a conference, I didn't even flinch. Skylar had mentioned it so casually, just tossed it out while pouring her second cup of coffee, her hair still damp from the shower. It's a regional design thing, she said. 2 days, nothing major. Boring stuff. I'll be back Friday evening. I nodded like I always did. She kissed my cheek, asked if I'd walk the dog, and left before I could even ask what city it was in. Not that I needed to. I already knew she wasn't going to a conference. Not the kind with name tags and PowerPoint presentations. That morning, she left her tablet behind. I doubt it was an accident. Skylar never forgot anything. She had a memory like a steel trap, dates, deadlines, even the brand of tea I liked in the winter. So when I saw it sitting on the kitchen island, unlocked and blinking with a calendar notification, my chest tightened. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Just leave it there, pretend I didn't see it. But then I remembered that look in her eyes. That moment on the cafe balcony. The night she whispered into the dark while pretending to be asleep next to me. The way she said love you lately like it was just punctuation. I tapped into her location sharing app. We'd both set it up back when she had that flat tire on I-5. A safety thing, we said. I never stopped sharing mine. She had. But her tablet hadn't caught up to that yet. And her location wasn't anywhere near the conference center she'd mentioned. Not even in the same city. She was at a resort. A spa, technically. Nestled by a lake about 40 minutes outside Seattle. I looked it up. Expensive. Scenic. Romantic. Definitely not the kind of place you bring your laptop and sit through a keynote about user interface architecture. I sat in the car for 20 minutes before I started driving. No plan. No confrontation rehearsed. Just a hollow ache in my chest and a kind of numb determination that overrode common sense. The closer I got, the more it felt like I wasn't driving toward a person, I was driving toward an answer. Maybe even the end. The resort sat on the edge of a forest. Pines lined the narrow roads and the lake shimmered through the breaks in the trees. I didn't check in. I didn't ask questions. I just parked a block away and walked through a nearby public park that ran parallel to the property. I followed a trail that curved behind the main building, winding upward until I found a clearing that looked down over the resort's private balcony. And that's where it happened. That's where everything broke. There she was. Skylar. Standing barefoot on a glass-paneled balcony overlooking the lake. Champagne in one hand. That same off-the-shoulder dress she wore on our anniversary last year. She wasn't alone. He was there. The man from the cafe. He came up behind her like he'd done it 1,000 times. Not nervous. Not unsure. He placed his hands on her waist, leaned in, said something that made her smile. And then he kissed her. Slow. Confident. Not a guilty kiss. Not one of those impulsive, regret-it-afterward mistakes you see in movies. This was practiced. Familiar. She turned into it. She didn't flinch. Didn't look around. Didn't pull away. And I didn't move. I didn't take a photo. Didn't scream. Didn't charge through the trees and demand answers. I just stood there, watching the woman I loved become a stranger in real time. It's a strange thing, feeling your heart break and not panicking. You'd think it would be loud. Explosive. But for me, it was quiet. Like watching a glass fall in slow motion. I didn't feel anger. Not then. I didn't feel jealousy. I didn't even feel sad. I felt removed. Detached. Like I was watching a play I'd already seen 12 times. Like I already knew how the final act would end. They stood there for a long time. Talking. Laughing. Holding hands. And when they finally went back inside, I turned and walked back to my car. The drive home felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from. The road blurred. My hands stayed at 10 and 2, just like they taught me back in driver's edition. My mind wasn't racing the way I expected it to. I wasn't plotting revenge or imagining some dramatic confrontation. I wasn't even thinking about divorce. I just kept hearing that laugh in my head. The one from the cafe. The one where I was the joke. That was the moment I realized something had shifted deep inside me. Not just my trust in her, but my trust in me. In my instincts. In my ability to read the person I'd built a life with. I used to believe we could handle anything together. That no matter how hard things got, we'd find our way back. But this wasn't something we could come back from. Not because of the kiss, but because of how normal it all looked. How at home she seemed in that moment. How effortless the lie had become. She wasn't lost or confused or scared. She was in love. Just not with me. When I got home, the house felt unfamiliar. Like I'd walked into a place I used to live but no longer belonged in. Every framed photo on the wall felt like it was mocking me. Every corner of the living room echoed with memories I no longer trusted. I sat on the edge of our bed and looked around at the life we'd built, our matching nightstands, the candle she always lit in the winter, the pair of slippers she wore when it got cold. All of it looked staged now. Set dressed. As if the real life had been happening somewhere else with someone else. And maybe it had. She came home the next evening. I heard her keys in the door, her suitcase wheels tapping against the floor, the soft thud of her bag hitting the wall. She walked in, smiled like she always did after a trip. Ugh, she groaned, stretching. Those chairs in the auditorium should be illegal. My back is wrecked. I didn't say anything. Just looked at her. She sat on the couch, kicked off her shoes, started telling me about the conference. How there was a speaker from San Francisco she really wanted me to meet one day. How she took notes and even got an idea for a new client pitch. I nodded. I listened. I asked her if she wanted tea. She said yes. I made it for her. And while she sat there sipping it wrapped in a blanket and humming along to the playlist she'd made for wind-down nights, I watched her. Watched how easily she lied. How natural it came. How rehearsed the entire evening was. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because something had broken. And I wasn't ready to tell her just how deeply. After that weekend, everything changed, but not in the way you might expect. There was no screaming. No suitcase flung down the stairs. No midnight confrontation, no slamming doors. That would have been easier in some strange way. Anger has energy. It moves you. What I felt was nothing. Just silence. Skylar walked back into our house like it was still hers. Like nothing had happened on that balcony, no hands on her waist, no slow kiss against the lake breeze. She unpacked her things, did a load of laundry, and even asked if I wanted to watch that documentary series we'd been saving for months. The one about art forgery. The irony didn't hit me until later. I watched her move around the kitchen, humming under her breath, and for the first time in our relationship, I didn't feel like I was watching my wife. I was watching an actress. Someone who had memorized her lines and was now performing the role of loving partner for an audience of one. But I wasn't applauding anymore. And here's the part that haunts me the most: I didn't stop her. I didn't confront her. I didn't mention the tablet, or the tracking app, or the glass balcony and the man she leaned into like it was the most natural thing in the world. I just let her talk. Because when you already know the truth, you don't need the confession. And when the foundation of your relationship has already crumbled, all that's left is to stand still and wait for the dust to settle. That week, we played house. She'd kiss me on the cheek before leaving for work. I'd nod and say, "Love you," out of habit. We'd eat dinner, talk about the news, pretend the world was normal. But underneath the surface, there was a hum, like a TV left on in the next room. You can't see it, but you feel it. You know it's there. I started counting the lies. She'd say traffic was awful today, but I'd already checked her location. She left the office over an hour ago. She just didn't come straight home. She'd tell me I had lunch with Rachel from the marketing team, but Rachel's Instagram had a photo posted from New York. A work trip. No tag for Skylar. She'd say, "I'm tired," but she'd stay up for hours on the balcony again, headphones in, glass in hand, staring into the darkness like it held answers she didn't want to share with me. One night, I walked past the sliding door. She didn't see me. I watched her smile, actually smile, at whatever she was watching or whoever she was messaging. That smile wasn't mine anymore. Hadn't been for a while. I stopped checking her phone. I stopped checking anything, really. I didn't want more proof. I didn't want another image seared into my brain. I didn't need to see them together again. Once was enough. The damage was done. I think that's the part no one prepares you for, not the betrayal itself, but what comes after. The stillness. The way you have to keep living in the same space with someone who has already left you emotionally. How you make small talk over coffee with a person who kissed someone else only days ago. It's surreal. Like waking up in a life that looks like yours but feels off in every detail. Skylar, for her part, didn't seem to notice the shift. Or maybe she did and she just didn't care. She kept playing the part, maybe hoping I'd keep playing mine. She told me about meetings. She brought home takeout. She left sticky notes on the fridge that said things like, "Don't forget your dry cleaning," or "Dinner Thursday with the Millers." I read them, smiled, then threw them away. But behind all of that, something else was happening. I was preparing. Not actively, not at first. But in small ways. Quiet ways. I started backing up my files, closing and used accounts, double-checking where the joint credit cards were linked. Just in case. I started sleeping in the guest room for my back. She didn't push back on that. Some nights, I'd go for long drives, no destination. Just empty roads, the windows down, the kind of music I used to love before I forgot I had tastes separate from hers. I'd sit at gas stations for 20 minutes, sipping bad coffee and wondering how many other people were doing the same thing, figuring out how to leave someone without making noise. I told no one. Not my brother. Not my best friend from college. Not even my coworker Alan, who once told me he walked in on his ex-wife and her yoga instructor in his own kitchen and still can't smell coconut oil without flinching. I kept it all inside. Because part of me was still ashamed. Not just of her. Of myself. Ashamed that I didn't see it sooner. That I ignored the signs. That I let her shape our life to her liking and didn't notice when she started carving me out of it piece by piece. Ashamed that the version of me she laughed about in front of coworkers, the guy who panicked over wine menus and forgot anniversaries, might actually be real. Maybe I was easy to leave. I don't think she ever meant to get caught. Skylar was too careful for that. But maybe part of her wanted to get caught. Maybe she was tired of pretending too. Or maybe it just stopped mattering. Either way, the silence between us grew louder each day. We stopped touching. We stopped asking real questions. We stopped sharing space in any meaningful way. I'd hear her talking on the phone from the bedroom using the quiet voice she didn't use with me anymore. I'd pass by the bathroom door and catch her leaning into the mirror like she was trying to find someone she used to be. Someone who didn't lie. But the truth? I wasn't looking for her anymore. I was watching her fall apart from a distance. And I was letting her. Because I was already gone. Emotionally, mentally, my heart had packed its bags weeks ago. But the body? The man who wore the ring and still answered to babe? He was just waiting. Waiting for the moment when the silence became undeniable. Waiting for the final fracture to come. Because I knew it would. It always does. I always assumed that if my marriage was going to end, it would be because of love, love that died, love that wandered, love that ran out. I never imagined it would be money that finally snapped the thread. Not the lack of it, the stealing of it. It started with a receipt. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't digging through her purse or pulling up bank statements like some paranoid husband. I was just cleaning out the kitchen drawer, the one where we kept everything from coupons to batteries to expired concert tickets. Skylar called it the junk jungle. There, folded neatly among expired Thai food menus, was a receipt for a design software license. My name was on it. My email. My old logo from when I used to freelance full-time. The only problem? I hadn't used that software in over a year. Hadn't touched design work since I went full-time at the agency. I'd let the licenses lapse, shut down my site, even paused the portfolio I kept up for sentimental reasons. But this was new. Dated 2 months ago. Billed to a business account I didn't recognize. A card I didn't own. At first, I thought it was a billing mistake. Maybe a leftover auto-renewal on an old card. I sat down at my laptop and logged in to the account portal. Reset the password. Verified my old credentials. That's when the curtain started to fall. The dashboard lit up with active projects. Invoices. Client messages. Custom branding kits sent out under my name. The emails were sleek. Personalized. Professional. And not written by me. The designs themselves were good, great, even. Clean layouts. Smart typography. The kind of stuff I used to stay up late tweaking pixel by pixel. Only, I hadn't made any of it. But someone had used my templates. My color palettes. Even reused the welcome packets I had drafted years ago. Every detail screamed me except I wasn't behind it. I checked the payout tab. There it was. A linked bank account. Not mine. Registered under Skylar's name. I didn't move for a long time. Just sat there staring at the screen while the cursor blinked like it was mocking me. I clicked through the records, each file heavier than the last. 6 months of consistent client work. Projects I had no idea existed. And every one of them carried my name, my credentials, and my digital signature. She hadn't just started her own business. She had stolen mine. The next few hours were a blur of research and rage. I dug into the email headers. Matched IP addresses. Looked up tax IDs. She'd used my EIN, my business registration, even my old PayPal link, rerouted to a new email address under her maiden name. She'd kept everything just close enough to pass casual inspection but hidden behind layers I'd never thought to check. Why would I? She'd watch me build that business from scratch. Watch me struggle to get clients, pull all-nighters, pour myself into branding that felt personal. She used to make fun of how obsessive I was about fonts. You spend more time on kerning than I do on my hair. She'd laugh. She knew how much it meant to me, and she used it anyway. When I confronted her, I didn't shout. I didn't even raise my voice. It was a Thursday night. She came home late again. Said she'd had a happy hour with the girls. Her makeup was still fresh. Her heels louder than usual on the wood floors. I was sitting at the dining table, the laptop open, the invoice summary pulled up in full view. "Hey," she said, tossing her purse on the bench. "What's going on?" I didn't answer. She walked over, leaned slightly, saw the screen. Everything in her face shifted. She didn't even try to pretend she didn't know what she was looking at. "Okay," she said slowly, brushing a hand through her hair. "Before you freak out." "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't start with that. Just tell me why." She hesitated, just long enough to confirm what I already knew. "I was trying to help," she said finally. "You weren't using it. The site, the clients, all that stuff, you let it go. You thought you'd take it? I thought I'd continue it," she snapped. "You gave it up. I didn't want it to die." "You didn't want it to die?" I repeated, stunned. "What about me? What about us? You didn't think maybe I should be consulted before you started signing contracts in my name?" She stepped back, folding her arms. Defensive. Always. "You're acting like I committed some kind of crime." "You did," I said, my voice low. "You used my name, my EIN, my signature. You opened an account and collected money pretending to be me. That's fraud, Skylar." She rolled her eyes. "God, Mark, don't be dramatic. It was just freelancing. I'm good at it. You should be proud." Proud. The word hit like a slap. You want me to be proud that you hijacked the one thing I built for myself? That you turned my name into your profit? I didn't mean for it to be a betrayal. That was her answer, as if intention was the real crime. I didn't say anything else that night. I just closed the laptop, walked past her, and went straight to the guest room, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, trying to understand how the woman I loved could not only betray me emotionally, but professionally, personally, financially. There's something uniquely devastating about realizing that while you were busy grieving the collapse of your relationship, the other person was profiting off of you. Quietly, systematically, I started doing the math in my head. How long it had been going on. How much money she'd made. How many clients thought they were talking to me. How many designs out in the world bore my watermark created by her. She'd built an identity out of mine. And all while she told me she was tired, stressed, burned out. She wasn't burned out. She was just burning me. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, eyes open, feeling every second pass like a heartbeat I couldn't calm down. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to yell anymore. I wasn't going to plead for truth or understanding. I was going to take my name back, and I was going to do it the right way. Quiet, clean, legal, because she might have stolen my brand. But she didn't realize she was the one about to lose everything. I reached out to Jane, the lawyer who helped me set up my sole proprietorship years ago. Trusted, sharp, no drama. I didn't tell her everything at first, just enough to make her pause mid-sentence. Then I showed her the files, the contracts, the payouts. Her eyes narrowed. "We're going to clean this up properly," she said. Over the next few weeks, we built the case, backed up every invoice, every email, closed joint accounts, rerouted my business registrations. I retitled the apartment. Quiet, efficient steps. Skylar, meanwhile, poured wine, laughed at shows, texted God knows who. She had no idea the life she stood in was already dissolving under her feet. I didn't shout. I didn't warn her. I just waited. The papers arrived by courier late on a Friday. Divorce. Fraud complaint. Every detail spelled out. Skylar opened the envelope in the kitchen. Silence first, then her footsteps. She stood in the doorway, shaking. "Mark, wait, we can talk about this." But the documents already said everything. The stolen business, the affair, the lies. She reached for explanations, but the words wouldn't come. For the first time, she looked like she truly didn't know what to say. I stood up, grabbed my bag. "You built this," I said, "without me," and I walked out the door calm, certain. Done.